And to turn on. You got it.
Hey,
We are recording.
all right. Okay, so let me start all over again. I would like to officially call the June meeting of the Airport Commission to order. And Mark, the first order of business is the proof of posting and notice.
Yes, Mr. Chair, we have it posted on our front bulletin board. It's, I presume, posted at the airport. Rich, is that correct?
It is.
Thank you. And we sent it out through our listserv as usual. And so it went out to our subscribers for the Airport Commission mailing.
Great. Okay, thank you, Mark. Why don't we just do a roll call for the record to see who's here and who's not here? So Mark, could you do that, please?
Sure. John Halleck,
Yes, here.
Michelle Bond,
Here.
Mayor Gurdeep Brar,
Here.
Alder Robert Burke,
Present.
Alder Luke Fassard. I saw him earlier.
Okay,
Luke Fassard.
Here.
There he is. I see him. David Lorman
Here.
and Kevin Munson.
Here.
okay, great. Looks like we have a full house tonight. First order of business is the election for the officers for this coming year and actually who will conduct this meeting. So any nominations?
Are we, go ahead, Robert.
Oh, this is Robert Burke. I would like to nominate John Halleck for chair.
I will
Michelle.
second that.
Okay. Is there any other nominations? Okay, with that, I don't need to make a motion. I guess we'll just have a vote. All in favor of John Halleck being the chair, please say aye.
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 Opposed, same side. Okay, that's unanimous. Okay.
Congratulations.
Thank you very much. I enjoy being able to help. Now we need to call for nominations for the vice chair. Any nomination for the vice chair?
This
I
is,
nominate Robert Burke.
Okay,
I will-
Robert.
I will second that. This is Luke.
Okay, first and second, any other nominations? All in favor of Robert as the vice chair, please say aye.
Aye.
All in favor, same side. Robert, welcome to the team.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Okay, next item of business is the approval of the minutes. I'll give everybody a few minutes to take a look at it. And when somebody is comfortable, we can make a recommendation.
This is Robert. I would make a motion to approve the minutes as drafted.
Okay, anyone care to second that?
Second. Dave.
Yes, okay, David seconded. So Robert first, David second. Any discussion? Okay, with that, call the vote. All in favor of approve the minutes, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same side.
I have to abstain. I wasn't there at that meeting.
Okay, and one abstention. Okay, minutes are approved. Next is the airport managers report. We wanted to save time tonight for the discussion of the master plan, so we include it in the packet. If there's anybody has any specific pressing questions, obviously we will answer those or have Rich answer those. Okay, hearing none, we'll move on. The financial statements look fairly normal. And again, if anybody has any questions, if not, we will move on. Everything is moving as anticipated.
Great. Thank
So
you.
we'll move on past the financials. So now we're to as they say, the meat and potatoes. So we're going to go through the master plan. So I just wanted to make just a couple of really brief comments. And the question seems to be one of, will changes in the airport in and of themselves increase the amount of traffic? And in the discussions with Rich and on reading as many of the pilot operating handbooks as I could find and data that I could find, the answer is I really don't think that any of these will really materially change the amount of traffic that we have. What will is just the organic growth of aviation. I mean, if a Beech 99 can land today, 100 can land tomorrow. If a CJ1 can land today, 100 can land tomorrow. If another dozen Cessnas want to land, yeah, they can land. So there seems to be this linkage that there's the taxonomy or the structure of the airport is directly linked to traffic. And the fact that it really isn't. These changes that are proposed, I think some of them have a great effect on the surrounding community, and they also have an effect on safety. But to think that because there's no changes, there will be this change in the amount of airplanes flying or the quantity that may fly in a year, is those people that have that perception, I'm afraid are going to be very unhappy a year or two from now, because I think it'd be very difficult to materialize. So that's just kind of my perspective and looking to some of these. So why don't we start out with the runway 1028, which seems to be the biggest one under discussion. There were a number of alternatives for 1028. There was a no build, and there were 4 alternatives. The ANPAC passed down to us 2 choices. 6 people voted for the no build, and 5 people voted for the alternative 2. After reviewing the options, does any of the commissioners feel strongly about another option not put forward by ANPAC? So we'll keep our discussions down to the no build and the alternate 2.
John, just so I can help the
Yes.
commission, what would you like me to display on the screen? Would you like me to display what would you like?
You can, yeah. I think everybody should have seen all those stuff by now. If you want, you can. Why don't you show us the what ANPAC voted on and how they voted? I think that's down a ways. There you go. So this is what the votes were. And as I said, these were handed down to us. We can add to it if we feel strongly that ANPAC missed something, but if we don't, we'll restrict our discussions to these 2 options, which is no build or 4,440 foot westerly. Just so I can get kind of a consensus and to get some direction from everyone. Maybe rather than not take a vote or anything else, before we start the discussion, can we just maybe poll everybody and see where their thinking is in terms of number 1 versus number 2? And, do you think that no build is the right choice? And then, or do you think the 4,400 is the right choice? And then we'll just tally it up and see where we're at, and then have a discussion, and then hopefully somebody can make a motion. So I'll just start arbitrarily in the order that we did the roll call. And Michelle, what's your thinking right now without having another discussion? Are you in favor of the no build or the 4,400?
My knee-jerk reaction was the 4,000 in between the 200, but I think if the 2 choices are primarily, then I'd go with the 4,400.
Okay, all right, good, thank you.
And just for clarification, I think actually alternative 2 was 4,440. So
4,440. We're adding 440 to the runway.
440. Yep. Thank you for that clarification.
Yeah, no, thank you, Robert. I appreciate that. Gurdeep, what is your thoughts?
Well, no build, absolutely. I
Absolutely.
think we have one of the safest airports, and there's absolutely no need to add to it. And I will be happy to justify it.
Okay, well, we're going to give you a chance to do that. Robert, what are your thoughts?
I will not change my vote from what I did at AMPAC, which was
No
I voted
build.
for no build, correct?
And Luke, what are you thinking?
Yeah, so taking a step back, let me just say first and foremost that I wanted to thank the members of the AMPAC Commission for all of the work that they did to put together all of these recommendations, particularly Robert. I know coming in and sharing it kind of midstream was incredibly difficult. So I just wanted to say thank you for your service to this community. For me, I'm having a hard time when I look at those two options, just in a vacuum, justifying the additional 400 feet, and therefore I'm going to be in favor of no build. Now I'm hopeful, and I think, John, you're going to get there, that we think about this as part of a comprehensive component that includes other elements of the
Yes.
AMPAC recommendations. But
Yes.
for this right now, for this, in a vacuum, I'm going to say no build.
Okay, great. And then Kevin, what are you thinking?
I'm unmuted. There we go. Okay, I'm unmuted.
Okay,
Okay, so again, I really want to thank everybody, AMPAC, Mead and Hunt, the city of Middleton, and everyone else that put in a lot of time on this master plan. I was a proponent for AMPAC early on, and this is my 5th airport master plan I've worked on, and I know how difficult it is, and this was right in line with other master plans and processes that I've been through. Now, with all of that said, I'm a flight instructor, I'm a pilot. Anytime we have more runway and it doesn't fundamentally change the category of airplanes that can come in other words, it's the same mix, then adding 10 feet. I'm for adding 10 feet, but in this case, it's 440. So my alternate number 2 would be my first choice.
okay. So you would do 440.
4,440.
Yeah, 4,100. And then David, did I ask you? I want to make sure I did. David Lorman?
No, you didn't yet.
Yeah, okay.
I'm also in favor of alternate number 2. And I guess, my perspective just in terms of background on this is, I certainly went into all of this thinking the airport is fine just the way it is. It's a great place and it's run well. And there really isn't a lot of need to make big changes. But getting a grasp and understanding, the money behind it. One is the fact that a majority of the costs are supported, through the federal funds and probably whatever we get from the BOA. And secondly, really, it boils down to safety.
Yeah.
And as a pilot, you can never have enough runway in terms of safety. And I very much agree that it's not going to affect the volume of the airport. If we look at the long-term future of where aviation is going in general aviation, and we can discuss that later. I very much agree with what you say, John, in terms of it's the same airplanes are going to land there no matter what. So if there's an opportunity to make it a safer place, make it a safer place.
Yeah. Yeah, my feeling is I'm on the fence myself to a little degree. I mean, no build, whether you do one or the other, honestly, it's really not going to change that much materially. I mean, the planes that are landing are going to continue to land. But I'm always in favor of safety. And the thing about runway length, it's just one component of safety.
The other thing is, the ultimate long-term future of Middleton and of the airport and of the whole surrounding area. Middleton has gone through nothing but tremendous amounts of growth. You can't go around town without running into the expansion of a high-density multifamily apartment unit going up, or utilizing every available space around the city for more housing development. And so, if the airport is going to stay in step with the general growth of the city in the west side of Madison, then I think we have to look very far forward into the future and not pass up on any financial opportunity that if someone's going to give us money, why would we not take the money? And especially because it's such a long-term project and it's far down the road. So you start thinking about it now and say, we don't have to make the airport larger, but if we say no now, then we might limit our ability to get funding to do so in the future. And so we just don't know what the ultimate impact of that is. So I think it's important to not turn down money if it's offered.
No, I agree with a lot of things you have to say. The other thing that I didn't say is the additional length is still keeps the runway protection zone on the airport existing property. And there is, to my understanding, no condemnation would be taking place. And the airport, the approach would not go any lower because it's defined by the obstacles that exist to the west. So you'll have a higher minima, but you can't get any lower. So nobody's going to be flying over anybody else's houses. So you know, from a pilot standpoint, I lean obviously to a little bit extra length. So Gurdeep, you wanted to champion the no build. So why don't you take the floor, and then you can tell us why we need to do the no build.
Oh, absolutely. To begin with, I want to say thank you to Ray Fay for serving on this commission the longest than anyone else. He started in 2004. He has been serving with the Mori company even before that. And also, I want to say I'm happy to be with you here today. This is the beginning of the end of the airport master plan process. A huge thank you to Greg Stern and the Mead and Hunt for their hard work for many long months, almost 2 years. Their expertise and hard work is evident in the report. And as we know, Bureau of Aeronautics is paying a big part of the bill, while the city pays $50,000. Thanks to Josh Albrook and the others at BOA. Now, big thank you to all the MPAC members, especially to Lee Hubbard and then earlier Robert Buck. He did a phenomenal job, by the way, for chairing the MPAC, and to Vice Chair Cynthia Richardson as well. Special thanks to all citizens of Middleton, towns of Middleton and Springfield and others who provided their input at various meetings in person, as well as by phone or email. A big part of the democracy is citizens' participation and to make your voice heard. And I want to say thank you to all of those. And thanks to all of you, the Airport Commission members, your time, talent, and vote and voice matters. I want to say big thank you to our city staff, especially Mark Opitz. He has spent lots and lots of hours on this, but also to Mike Davis, Abby Toon, and many others who have spent countless hours on this project. Our city has spent a large amount of resources in this project. Thanks also to FBO Rich Mori, whose grandfather started this airport long ago, and to SASO operator Capital Flight, and all those who use this airport. Thanks to anyone I may have missed. So now to begin with, that why we think no build is the best option. It is obvious that there's not much we can do to make everyone happy. We have to make hard choices. That's our job. That's why we are here. As a mayor of Middleton, my first responsibility is to the residents of Middleton and the businesses located here. But we are also responsible to our neighbors, the towns of Middleton and Springfield. There are boundaries dividing us, but we are all entitled to the same quality of life. The boundaries could change at any time. Let's be respectful and kind to each other. The decisions we make should preferably be in the interest of the whole region. Why Runway 1028, the best option is no change or no build. Our airport is excellent. There's no issues with this runway at all. Number one, 93%, and I repeat, 93% of the airport users who responded to the Polka survey in 2018 were fully satisfied with the runway length. Absolutely no issues. We would be hard pressed to find this level of satisfaction on any issue, period. Number two, safety record. In the past decades, I'm talking about the decades, there were only 2 or 3 reported incidents at that Mori airport in past decades. That's what I'm talking about. Where else in the world would you find such an excellent safety record? Our runway length is excellent. That is, let me repeat, our airport contour data available is simply outstanding. Hardly any reported safety incident in past decades. Now, if there's sometime the weather is bad, Dane County Airport is right in our backyard. If conditions are such that a pilot doesn't feel safe landing here, they can land our county airport. There's no big issue there. It makes no sense to make folks' lives miserable for a few flights a year. We have one of the best airports as a backup. Let's use it as often as needed. In terms of tax dollar, the city of Middleton does not get a penny from the airport. It's an enterprise fund. We get about $80,000 in personal property taxes from the airport, but that goes to the TIF. Bureau of Aeronautics does have a brochure showing the economic benefit of the airport to the area. Of course, it brings jobs and other as well, but I'm talking about the direct benefit to the taxpayers. We do not need bigger planes here. We are happy the way it is. No issues with that. As far as the airport users are concerned, small percent of the folk who live and or work have businesses in Middleton as a hangar or has a hangar or uses the airport. Only small percent of the people who live and work or have business in Middleton use the airport or have hangars. Sooner than later, well, that's the other issue which we will come later. I don't see any reason whatsoever to increase the runway length as it is. And there are very strong reasons, as I just pointed out here. There's no safety issues. There are no issues, period.
Okay, thank you, Mayor. All right, so we've heard both sides. Would anybody like to add anything? Yeah, the only comment I would add is that I know I saw some emails that said, well, let's not make it safe for anybody to land, so they'll go somewhere else. And frankly, I have to bristle under a statement like that. Because, and I also heard a comment that let's worry about the safety of those around us. And I would say that the safety of the surrounding community is linked to the safety of the pilots, right? Because if the pilots aren't safe, how can the community be safe around it? So there's definitely a linkage there. And it's not a strategy to try to make an airport unsafe to divert traffic to go somewhere else. You need to safely accommodate the aircraft that you're providing service to today. So would somebody care to make a motion?
I make a motion for no build option.
Okay, we have the mayor's made a motion for a no build option. Would anybody like to second that?
This is Robert. I would second that motion.
Okay, and Robert would second. Is there any additional discussion?
Yeah, Chairman,
Yes,
I'd like just 30 seconds or so to take the floor.
yes, you may.
So I live, this is Kevin Munson. I live over in Middleton Hills, and you know, the original build, the discussion around the build looked at extending the runway 5,500 feet, which I definitely wasn't in favor of. I don't want larger jets flying over the top of my house at 4 a.m. or whatnot. So we were looking at just a possible, you know, almost like an overrun. They put it some runways to extend the runway for safety. And I just want to make it clear that I am for a lengthening of the runway, as long as it doesn't allow larger planes to come in. And I think that was the intent of these alternatives. And I just want to say one more thing before I sign off here is that, you know, I've heard a few comments, actually a lot of comments that only a few people use these Moray Field. But in fact, everybody that accepts mail, cargo, flies on airliners, or anything else, they do use Moray Field. These are reliever GA airports, and without these reliever GA airports, general aviation airports, the aviation transportation infrastructure would literally fail overnight because there's just not enough room at these larger airports. So they push other operations onto these GA airports. So everybody, and I mean it, everybody uses these airports, these GA airports, whether they're directly flying out of them or not. I just want to make sure that everyone's clear of that, because I've heard people say, well, I don't use it, but they do. And I just want to bring that up. And that's it. That's all I have to say.
And thank you, Kevin. I agree with you that there's one flight coming in the morning for UPS or whatever. So yeah, so it is general aviation airport. I was especially referring to as a mayor, the people who live in Middleton. That was my point. So of course, lots of people are using it, no question about it. So thank you.
Thank you.
All right, so.
I have a question. There was a motion by Mayor Brar, but was there a second?
Yes, Robert seconded.
I didn't capture that. Thank you.
Okay, and then we had a discussion. And then we're gonna do a roll call vote. And all in favor of the, so let me just clarify. A vote in favor of the no build is actually a vote in favor of the 4,440. So.
No, that's not correct. A no build is the status quo. The
Yes,
motion was to maintain the status quo.
yes. So that's the vote that's on the table. And so why don't you do the roll call? And go ahead.
I'll do it alphabetically then. Bond. So a vote of aye of yes means you vote for the status quo.
Yes, the
A vote
state.
of no means you prefer a different option.
Yes.
Okay, and am I able to abstain?
You can, yeah, I guess you could.
Okay, then I'd like to do that.
Okay, so Michelle abstains.
Rar,
Yes.
Burke,
Yes.
Broussard,
Luke? Are you there, Luke?
he is not there at the moment.
Yes, sir.
Halleck,
No?
Lorman,
Nope.
Munson,
Nope.
We gotta circle back to,
Luke is messaging me saying that he's trying to vote. Just 1 second here. Let me ask to unmute him again. I got to find him on the screen. There he is. Okay, Luke, I've unmuted you. Or there you go.
Can you hear me now? Can you hear
yeah,
me now? Oh, thank goodness. Thank you. I vote yes.
okay.
So
with
that's
this- go
it's
ahead.
3-3 with 1 abstention.
Okay, in that case, do we just pass it on to the Common Council in that form?
Yes.
That's fine. Sure.
Yeah,
there's
because
no
it
reason-
wouldn't make any difference if
It's
we
just
flip
advisory.
it around.
Right.
Okay, so,
The
Runway-
other option, since there is, if somebody wanted to make a second proposed motion before we move on, that would be another option. I don't know if anybody
Sure.
wants to.
what would that be? To vote for the other, I mean, it's a push.
Sometimes when there's a deadlock on a vote, I've seen committees over the years make a motion of no recommendation. I mean, that would be one option. I'm not trying to steer you one way or the other, but I think that's what Alder Burke had in mind.
Well, if Robert would like to make that motion, I'm sure.
I would, before you do that, I would highly recommend, this happens often in finance committee and other committees whereby there's not a clear recommendation from the committee and that is taken under consideration. And I think actually probably paints the very type of picture that we want to the city council about how divided this particular issue is. So I would highly recommend, as a member of the council and as of the airport commission, that we leave it at a 3-3 tie.
Okay.
Okay, so if there's no additional motion, then we can move on to the next item. Okay, let's talk about runway 119. I actually think that runway 119 is actually the most pivotal of all the decisions to be made for a couple of reasons. One is that the prevailing wind favors runway 119. And if that runway is paved, it will then consolidate the two traffic patterns into one. It will take whatever the prevailing wind is. And since it's the prevailing wind, over 50% of everything that flies over the town of Middleton will be diverted into the north. And so even though it's not in parity, it's not a one-to-one replacement, it does provide, I'd say 90%, because almost all the Cessnas and the small aircraft obviously can use it. And so 90% would be diverted. It would consolidate the traffic patterns. And I think the other thing to think about as we go forward is it might provide if we close one runway down for maintenance, we would have a second runway so that the airport could stay open. So I see all of those as good things. If we look at what was offered up, and I didn't print all of those out, but we have 1, 2, 3, we have 4 for alternate 6 or 7, which is a longer paved. And we have alternate 2. I guess that would be, which one is that, Mark? Alternate 2.
Alternate 2, and it's at the top of the screen. Am I still sharing my screen?
Yeah.
So alternate 2 is shorten it to, here, let me make this larger.
Okay, I see it. Shorten it is 1,000 feet. Yeah, no, that's great. So basically, okay, go ahead.
So alternate 2 and 3 are keeping the turf runway in its current location, but shortening it for the purposes of moving the runway protection zone on the southern end to the north so that it doesn't straddle Airport Road.
So,
Property to the south. That's the main purpose of alternatives 2 and 3.
yep,
Alternatives 6 and 7 involve a paving, establishing a paved surface of 3,200 feet. And before I go on, John, I just want to clarify something you said, because in my notes, I thought you said 2 different numbers. You talked about 50% of the planes that would take off over the town of Middleton would shift to runway 119, but then I heard you say 90% of the planes, so I wasn't sure.
So I said the a shortened 119 is not a functional equivalent to a 4,000. So the 3,200 foot runway, there is some traffic that it can't accept compared to, say, a 4,000 foot runway. So when I talked about consolidating the traffic patterns, I said 90% of that traffic or more would consolidate, but not all, because some planes would need more than 3,280 feet. And I apologize if I wasn't.
Okay,
Wasn't clear.
It was so the percentages referred to 2 different things. That's what I want to clarify. Thank you.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I know what I mean to say, but I don't always say it. It runs in circles. So option 2 and 3 makes the runway virtually unusable only to a few planes. And alternate 6 and 7 makes the runway usable to almost all the planes. There are some that require 4,000 foot that will obviously are more than 3,280. So again, let's just kind of run around the room, if you will, Mark, and kind of poll people just to see where their thinking is at. And then we can take it from there. So if you could do that, I'd appreciate it.
You want me to go in the same order from the beginning or from the end?
Yeah, whatever, any order you choose.
Well, then I'll just do the same order. So Michelle Bond.
I was a moment distracted. Can you, I'm
Okay,
voting on the,
Well, we're just giving comments on what your reaction is. We can start at the end.
I feel like we should just keep it status quo, what it currently is. That's my feeling.
Okay, so there's a no bill.
Yeah.
All right. And go ahead, Mark.
Mayor Brar is next.
Yeah, well, I would, if you don't have any problem, why fix it? I would want to know from the tail draggers who use the grass runway. I think, I need to have more data from those who will be using this. If you reduce the length, what happens to them? So I can see that when you reduce it, it does help with the RPE, and it also makes the 1028 safer. They won't be overlapping. I like that part, but I do not want the people who are using this runway now to feel that they're disadvantaged in any way. So I'm for no build, but if those people who are using right now do not feel disadvantaged, then I will go with that option, whatever that is, Mark.
I added an item on in the discussion to talk about an option for a grass runway. And, there's an opportunity, I think, to put in a grass runway. I don't want to get ahead of myself, but over on the other side of the solar farm. So I think there's a way to pave it and still get a grass runway for the tail wheel people. So that's previews a common attraction.
Okay, well, if we accommodate them in some form, and I would want to, as I have said before, I want to keep everyone happy. I know it's a very tough goal, but that's still what I want to do. And so here, what I see is that, let's say we go with option 6 and 7, 3250, whatever that is.
Okay.
So no, let me just finish this. So if we think that 4,000 feet isn't long enough, how about 3250 will do the job? I know you said there will be certain planes what won't be accommodated. And the other is the price tag, even if it's close to 17 million or whatever. And then Schneider Road. I mean, you can say this, that if you had a dream, you could do this, but then you also have to see what is the probability that BOA would come up with that sort of a money. And then I don't know what the city part would be, that city would be inclined to spend that sort of money too. And then moving the Schneider Road. If you look at the abstract, that it will move some of the traffic from 1028. I can see that why it would be helpful, but the question is the practicality. So that's where I am.
Okay. So I'm a little confused. Is that a no build then, or is that a 6 and a 7?
Oh, I will go with the. Well, ideally, if the money was available and the county says we can move the Schneider or 6 or 7, but right now that doesn't seem possible. I'm going with no build or option number 1, if that's acceptable to the folks who use the runway.
Okay. All right. No build for, okay. Go ahead, Mark. Mark?
Yep, sorry, I was just typing one more thing. So next we have, I lost track of where I am. Alder Burke.
Great. I'm going to go into a little bit of background here, not to slow things down, but just to maybe help people with their viewing of this. No build option does mean exactly what we have, and that's acceptable and it's safe. But it does leave the runway protection zone to the south of the north-south runway, extending off airport property. And there's nothing wrong with that. It's totally allowable, but I personally thought there would be benefit to moving the runway to some level to see if we could, improve that situation and have the runway protection zone moved onto airport property. What we were, out of the options that are in front of us now, and there were more options, but these are the options that were kind of focused in on during the AMPAC meetings. Shortening the grass runway, which is alternative 2 or alternative 3, that goal was to still have a grass runway, but the reason we were shortening it was not to shorten it per se, it was to move the runway protection zone that's to the south of the grass runway, to move that north onto airport property. So the goal is not to shorten the runway, it's to try to make an improvement to the airport, right?
Robert, do you see it on your screen, by the way?
I do, and I see the cursor, you've got the cursor kind of
Yeah.
hovering around that southern runway.
Yeah, so
protection
there's
zone.
6 points. Sorry to interrupt you. I just wanted to make sure you could all see this so that visually it helps to, I think, show that 6.35 acres of the runway protection zone is currently extending off airport property. And if I may quickly interject, the property owner here, Mr. Bletner, has requested that the master plan shift. He would like to see the RPZ not extend onto his property. So I don't know if that ever has been stated or not, but I wanted to state it now.
And also, it's not uncommon for Wisconsin airports our size to have RPZs that extend outside the property line. It may not be desirable, but it's pretty common.
Correct. So I wanted to give that background to why alternative 2 and 3 are there, as well as the no build option. Now, I'm strongly leaning toward alternative 6 or 7, and those, what those do is they don't shorten the runway. They do pave the north-south runway, and they shift it to the north, and also, they shift to the north, and they change orientation a tiny bit. Now, and yeah, you can kind of see it's halfway on the page. There we go.
Sorry, it's very slowly scrolling today for some reason.
Okay, so the reason I really liked alternative 6 and 7 was because it does shift everything north so that the runway protection zone is fully on airport property, which is not required, as Chair Halleck said, but it's a nice to have. It gives us a longer runway. It gives us a full, a nice long runway that's 3,280 feet. And 6 and 7, just so you know, are kind of, they're not exactly mirror images, but I kind of imagine them as mirror images, right? In one, the runways on the left and the taxiway is on the right. In the other one, the taxiway is on the left and the runway is on the right. So that's a way that kind of think of them as they're not identical, but they're similar. And I like that. And I just want to add that the reason it's 3,280 feet and not 4,000 feet or 4,200 feet or 5,000 feet is really what it does to Schneider Road, which you can see up above in orange color, I would say. This would require Schneider Road to move and be kind of bent up into this arc shape. And if you go longer than 3,280 feet for the runway, you end up having to bend that so far that it's not possible, and you end up basically saying Schneider Road goes away. So that's why other alternatives, I think there was actually an alternative 8, which had an even longer north-south runway, that didn't get any votes at AMPAC. And the main reason it was not considered a good alternative by AMPAC was that it was so long that you basically couldn't bend Schneider Road around it, and at the end of the day, you'd probably have to just eliminate Schneider Road there. And that was considered to be a no start condition for I think what was alternative 8. So I wanted to give people that background. I think all of these options are possibilities, but I personally think that alternative 6 or 7, which has a paved runway there, has some extended length, and as Chair Halleck said, gives a lot of planes, potentially, in the ballpark of 90% of the planes that currently fly on 1028. It would give them an option to instead, and maybe even a preferred option, to fly on 119, which is the north-south runway. And one other thing that I guess I wanted to say there is, if more traffic could be diverted to the north and south, it actually should help a lot of the noise concerns that we hear about every month here at the Airport Commission, because a lot of the planes that are flying right over established subdivisions in both the town of Middleton and the city of Middleton would no longer be generally flown over if people were predominantly using a north-south runway. So for those reasons, I think a north-south runway would be a great addition to this airport. And I think it would actually help a lot of the people who have concerns about the noise issues and where the planes are flying. So now that I've kind of talked it all out, my preference is alternative 6 or 7, and to me, they're fairly interchangeable.
Right. Okay, Mark, you want to continue?
Next is Alder Foussard.
Luke?
Thank you. Yep. So my question, and it may be going back to Robert because of 6 or 7, again, is, and the mayor raised this earlier, and I've been searching through the documentation, is trying to understand how that option would affect the tail dragger population outside of any sort of additional grass runway that I know John has put on the agenda for further discussion. And so if perhaps an individual, or either with AMPAC, or has an answer to that, or is it largely unknown at this particular point?
Well, I can say, since we prohibited landing alongside of 1028, they've been landing on 1028 for 1.5 years without any problem. So, I mean, there's such a small percentage of the population, not to discount that, but
Sure.
we have to think about aviation in general. And I think the value of sending people to the north and relieving the noise signature to the west, that's based on the context of what we've listened to for the last year. I think that's really important. I think we can try to accommodate them. I took Kevin Munson out to look at the land. I talked to Rich about it today. I think we could easily put a small runway of their liking on north of the solar array, along Schneider Roads, kind of somewhere. The soil would be good. And the only problem with that is you would get, again, this potentially two circuits going at one for a landing. You would have people on one and people on the other. So I think we can take care of that as a separate issue. But as far as the airport in general, man, I think you're hard pressed not to be thinking about paving that runway and make it as long as you can. But that's my 2 cents.
Go ahead, Robert.
Sorry, this is Robert again. My 2 cents there is the answer. You kind of hit the nail on the head. It's still a little undefined now. I think there's some evolving things happening at the FAA, and as John said, there's things that we could do at our airport that maybe are not shown in this picture that's on the screen right now. There might be some things that could actually have dedicated grass runway area. I'm not sure how that would work yet. It wasn't something
and nobody looked at
explored. Yeah, it wasn't really explored in detail during the AMPAC process. So the answer is we don't know yet. There's a lot that has to happen. And one other thing I'll say, because I apparently like to keep talking, this, 6 and 7 aren't something that would happen, immediately or next year even. If you
Right,
look
right.
closely at this, you actually see that this goes quite a bit off airport property currently.
Yeah.
So there would need to be people willing to sell land. There would need to be all sorts of, moving roads, a purchase of land, all sorts of things would need to happen for 6 and 7.
I mean, that's really all common council stuff. I mean, for our view,
Mhm.
I mean, we just have to let the common council figure that out.
Yep.
Are they willing to
Yep.
write the check? Can they buy the land? But from an aviation viewpoint, a consolidating traffic patterns and providing utility without allowing a higher category of aircraft, this is a great solution.
Yep. No, and I appreciate that and totally recognize that the tail draggers are a smaller population. That being said,
Yeah.
there's some of the most passionate pro-airport people out there, right? And oftentimes throughout this process, I've noticed that we've given a lot of deference to maybe some of the anti-voices while ignoring some of the pro. And I just want to make sure that we have, we hear from both sides.
Yeah.
So given the dynamic,
Yeah,
given
go
that
ahead.
dynamic, I would be in favor of option 2 or 3.
You want 2 or 3? Okay.
Yep.
Okay. Keep going.
John, I just wanted to point out, I don't know if Rich as airport manager has a technical correction or not, but he had his hand up, so maybe he could
Okay,
address
why
it.
don't you let Rich go ahead.
Thank you, John. I just wanted to point out that I know Robert said that we're flying over established neighborhoods. Those neighborhoods were not established before the air traffic patterns were established. We're doing our best to alleviate our noise footprint by modifying our traffic pattern to a great extent, quite a bit different than your standard FA pattern, and have been since the first subdivision went in, which was Hickory Woods, the first portion of that. So I just wanted to point that out. Secondly, the tailwheel aircraft that are capable of very short operations are operating off the grass between the taxiway and the runway on the far west side of runway 1028. If we go with the paved runway, I would anticipate, and again, there is no specific guidance by the FAA saying whether they can or cannot do that. But there's definitely no guidance that says we can't do that. The reality is, if we built and paved that runway, there would be another spot alongside it that they could do the same thing that they're doing right now, unless the FAA clarifies that. And they may clarify it so that we could be legal to establish a grass parallel runway alongside or not. That's what they've done out west. So I just wanted to pass that on to the committee. Thank you.
I'm disappointed. I'm very disappointed to hear that we're allowing people to land anywhere other than a designated runway. I thought the airport commission had a direction that the landings had to be on a identified runway and not between taxiways and any hopscotch, any place that they can land.
John, we haven't established an off or a runway. That was what the airport commission very much said we couldn't do that. We haven't done it.
No, we said that we revoked we revoked what the airport commission previously approved. And we add the caveat that when a runway could be identified alongside of any of the runways that was legal, that we allow it. Now, we can talk about this at the next meeting.
Right, I have no authority.
We can look at the minutes, Rich. It's
Yeah,
prohibited,
yeah.
it's prohibited as it is right now.
Okay, well, I have no authority to enforce.
Well,
Okay, let's stick to the agenda, please. So
Yeah.
let's,
So let's continue to move on. Go ahead, Mark.
John Halleck, you're next, but I think you already, let me look at the notes here.
Yeah, if it's up to me, I'd do 8, but that's, what do we give, we'll do me last. How's that? David?
David Lorman is next.
Yes.
So I support really a multitude of options, one that was never even mentioned. But bottom line at the end of the day is I support the growth and expansion of a solution for North and South. So that said, I also am not in favor of shortening anything right now. So the way the turf runway is set up right now is fine.
Okay, so
But-
you, right,
Yeah, but I think my message to the common council, you know, would be simply this. If there's an opportunity to do some expansion of north and south, even if we were to move the turf runway north and keep it the same length or lengthen it, to put the RPZ on the runway property, there's some viability to there. And I don't know why that never really came up in the discussion at AMPAC, because to me, it also seemed viable. Maybe it just wasn't cost effective. Why would you keep a turf runway and just move it further north and just keep it long when we have to deal with all the other complicated aspects of probably acquiring property and this and that. But again, like I said, that's a decision. So for the common council, speaking strictly as a pilot, don't want to shorten anything. I'm in favor of keeping it the way it is. I think a turf operation is excellent, not only for the tail draggers, but the airport is also a training facility, and pilots need to learn how to land and take off on a variety of surfaces in operations. I'm also in favor of lengthening the runway and looking very far forward to our future. Again, so if there's opportunity, I think we always have to take it. So expanding the runway would make sense, and moving it to the north and paving it, if it can be done.
so you're saying 6 and 7 then?
Absolutely.
Okay.
So that would be my general message, is that strictly as a pilot, you don't ever want to have less runway. You want more runway, and we want safety in mind. And finally, because it is a training facility, maintaining a turf spot, turf operation, I think is very important. Tailwheel endorsement training does take place out at the airport. There has been an increase in some tailwheel operation and also tailwheel training. It goes beyond, in my opinion, of a hobbyist or someone who's passionate about tailwheels. It's just also a matter of practicality. Tailwheel aircraft are configuration of aircraft that are common in the general aviation market. I don't think they're going to go away. And so having a mechanism to support that should be left on the table. Thanks.
Go ahead, Mark. Is it Kevin?
Kevin Munson.
Hello, thanks. So a couple of messages here I'd like to make sure get passed along to, both this commission and to the common council. I had met with Mead and Hunt early on and recommended that we include alternates in there, alternates in the master plan, as I had done before. We didn't have those originally, and I said they're really important because we don't know what's going to happen in the future, and we could have a half a dozen alternates in there, and in 10 years, 20 years from now, we don't do any of them. I'm seeing this now with South County Airport in the Bay Area with, in 10 years, they plan on closing Reed Hillview, and everything's off the table. So just to keep in mind that these alternatives are a way to document alternative viewpoints based on various inputs and needs at the time that the master plan is being, written, drafted, if you will. And we have to remember that times change, demand change, growth and development happens. We're seeing a ton of it in Middleton, just this unbridled growth. And along with that, the infrastructures have to change. The hospitals, the schools, safety, police, we've had issues there, and mostly the transportation infrastructure, whether it's the roads, which are, we've seen a lot of growth on the belt lines and airport, and growth of our airspace system. So it's good that we include these alternates. I think it's important that we've been taking these votes, but we need to, it's a proposed plan for the future 20 years from now. Now, with all of that said, kind of got off on my airport there, there's a couple of, I sat back for the last 6 months and just listened to comments. I didn't have a lot to say. I just wanted to listen. I knew how the process works, and I knew the importance of it. And, my master's thesis was on some of it and all that way back in the day, 30 years ago or whatever. But there were two things that I heard. One, preservation of land in Middleton around the airport, green space, yada, yada. And the second is aircraft noise over residential areas, especially west of the airport. So the two common themes I heard every time either the commission met or the AMPAC and with comments, and both of these, believe it or not, are related. Okay, and if we are truly and sincerely put politics aside and emotion aside and all this, if we want to improve or mitigate these concerns, we really need to consider the root cause and how we got to the situation where we have all of this growth and all of that. So the one thing I'd like to say is, I really hope the city of Middleton and the town of Middleton and Springfield really continue to work on developing compatible land use plans. I hope they all come together and work well together and do that. But in terms of the master plan, what can we do now? And based on my analysis, and these are my numbers, these are the data that I looked at. So if it's not correct, you can only blame me for it. We really only have one option to sort of mitigate this issue of preserving land around the airport and the agricultural land, as the Zieglers are really concerned about, and the aircraft noise over residential areas, especially west of the airport. And that alternative is 6 or 7. It's basically the same. 6 or 7, alternate 6 or 7 is a good idea because it's safer. There's people, they're the crosswinds. Forget about the turf runway for a minute, but landing in a crosswind is the most difficult thing to do in a tailwheel airplane. I teach in tailwheel airplanes. I've flown and checked out in everything from J3 Cubs to DC3s, including the World War II airplanes and all the aerobats that are nearly impossible to land. I know what it's like to land in a crosswind, and it scares the heck out of you. Well, by paving this runway in north-south, that would eliminate these crosswind landings, which are really difficult. I don't care who you are. Talk to any pilot. Crosswind runways are difficult. Secondly, and probably the most important, and this is my analysis. It moves traffic, possibly up to 60% of it, from the west of the airport, where we're hearing a lot of noise complaints, to north of the airport, where it's out over the agricultural areas, where it's not densely populated, as we would say in the airplane world, aviation world. Again, it preserves land. What's the best thing that you can build to preserve green spaces and land? Build an airport, because you can keep buying land and extending out the compatible land use zone, so you don't get a lot of development. So that's the green space. That's Middleton's, the town of Middleton and the city of Middleton's primary objective these days. However, I will say it will probably add more hangars, and it'll bring in more income for the airport. But let's say that paving that runway allows 20 hangars and 20 more airplanes at the runway. This is a secret that us flight instructors know. People that buy airplanes just don't fly them. They may fly them once a month or less. So by adding these airplanes, by adding these hangars, sure, it may increase the traffic by 1 to maybe 5%. These are my calculations, so you can only blame me if they're not true. But it reduces the traffic west of the airport by 60%. So this is a win-win for everybody. And yes, there's a whole lot of space out there. John took me out there. There's all kind of space for a turf runway for the tailwheel guys that like to land on turf. And it's a lot of fun. I've landed on turf. I didn't have to, but it is a lot of fun to do it. It's nostalgic and all of that. It saves your tires. But there's plenty of room for a grass strip out there. And that's pretty much my assessment of paving a north-south runway. Thank you.
Okay. All right. So I personally would prefer 8, but I understand that it's not a reasonable thing to do with because we have to get along with the town of Springfield, and we have to work together as partners in that. So I definitely think 6 and 7 is the best thing that we can do to consolidate traffic patterns, make things safer, and take noise away to the people to the west. And with that, I'd like to make a motion that the Airport Commission recommend options 6 and 7, 6 or 7 to the Common Council. Did I have anybody second that?
I'd like to second that.
Okay. So we have a first and a second. Would anybody care to discuss this anymore?
There, I'm sorry, John, Rich has his hand up again if you wish to recognize him.
Okay, Rich, go ahead.
I'll let the vote go forward because I just want a clarification with Kevin on Crosswind Landings for the record. I'm assuming he was talking about tailwheel aircraft. And yeah, it's not pertinent. It's one of those things we want to be clear, make clear to those who are not pilots that all crosswind landings are not dangerous. We do them on a regular basis. But the tailwheel aircraft have additional challenges with crosswinds. Anyway.
Okay. All right. So any more discussion on the runway choice? We have a first and a second on option 6 or 7. And if not, we'll call a vote. And Mark, will you go ahead and please, we'll call the roll for this.
Okay, alphabetically again, Bond. So
I support. Go
Okay.
ahead.
I'm just saying the motion is to support options 6 or 7, which are essentially interchangeable in terms of the taxiway being on one side or the other. So
And that would be an aye in favor.
yeah, so
so
it'd be
I
an
would say
aye.
aye.
Would be great. Thank you. So that's yes. Mayor Brar,
No,
Alder Burke,
Yes.
Alder Fuzard,
No.
Halleck,
Yes.
Orman,
Yes,
Munson,
Yes.
5-2.
Okay. All right, so that motion recommendation goes to the council. Next, we will go to hangar alternatives. And I listened to the tape and this was a little confusing to me because kind of the locations are tied to some of these options. But they're tied to some of the options, but maybe they should be disconnected and re-looked at based on what our conversations were. Yeah, okay, just leave that there, Mark, if you would for a second. So when I met with Kevin out there, because I think this has an effect, if you look at along Schneider Road, and maybe, so it would be going left to right, Mark. Yeah, there is enough room to put in a turf runway there. And then I'm not sure how it would all connect. And that would affect whether or not you put hangars there. So if you can put the turf runway in there, then you're gonna have to put the hangars down below. They'd have to either go with alternate build 2 would be one of the options. What are the other options? Can you just kind of go through them? There are only 3.
Sure. So obviously, status quo, no build is one option, which was
Yes.
always from the very beginning. That was always an option.
Yes,
So that's reflected here.
yes,
Option, this was called alternative 1, which showed hangars on existing airport property. There's some shown here to the west, but that would nibble into the Penny Klein Park and the creek, the channel that's there, the drainage channel, and then the one on the east end was also on airport property.
yes.
That's alternative 1. Alternative 2, which of all the hangar alternatives, AMPAC review of the 3 alternatives, this was either no build or this were the primary ones identified, and this is expanding hangars onto land northeast of the airport currently,
Yes.
on what's currently private land, accessible by a road that we have planned, that we had reserved the right to expand, or not the right, but we preserved the opportunity, let's put it that way.
Yeah, right away.
Yeah, we have the intersection of Venture Avenue and we know that it's possible to put a road in this way, and we preserved that opportunity when this was developed here, just in case this ever was something that was going to come up. And so that shows the hangars over here east of the new runway, and then alternative 3 shows hangars on the northwest end, which is the area that you're talking about, north of the solar array. Well, I'll leave my comments to myself. So
Yeah. So so if there's possible to build there, I mean, so it thinking out loud here, 2 or 3 are the ones that are most logical, depending upon whether or not you wanted to put, or there's capable of putting in a nice paved runway or a grass runway over there. And so it could be a choice, I guess. So why don't we just go through it again? On the table from the original vote was, they said 2 or no build. There was a 1B. So I don't have anything new to add beyond that. Looks like 3 wasn't an option for much of anybody. So why don't we restrain ourselves to no build or alternate 2 and get everybody's thinking? So why don't you kind of poll everybody and see where their thinking is, Mark?
okay, why don't we go backwards this time? How about Kevin Munson?
Okay, thanks, Mark. I'm for building the hangars. I can, again, it's a win-win. Bring these hangars in here, bring these owners in here, these planes sit. I don't see it significantly increasing the traffic at the airport, but it will significantly bring in more funds to this self-supporting airport. That's it.
Okay. So which one would it be, Kevin? We're looking at alternatives.
It's the number 2, I think it is, right?
Okay, that's 2 is what we're looking at. Okay, go ahead, Mark.
Going backwards again, David Lorman.
I support alternate number 2 as well.
Okay.
John, would you want me to skip you?
Sure, no, I'm fine. I would vote for 2.
Luke, Alder Foussard.
No build. Excuse me, no build.
Alder Burke.
Alternative number 2, please.
Mayor Brar. Mayor, you're muted. You're still muted.
He was going to leave at 6:30, I thought, but he may still be.
Yeah, it's not. Let me unmute you, Mayor. I can help you. Well, he just turned off his camera, but I asked to unmute him. All right, why don't we go to Michelle Bond while he gets reconnected?
I
Michelle?
support option 2.
Mayor Brar, are you there? You're unmuted.
Yeah. So I have few comments here. Number 1, for the hangars, let's validate the demand, and we need a commitment fee from or 10,000 or whatever, and fill the application. Someone may be inquiring about the hangar, they may have moved further on, and so we need to validate the demand, number 1. From the option presented, there's a West Side Pheasant Ranch Conservancy North Fork. It is North-South Fork, let's make that correction. And I would not want to do anything which will affect the floodplain or affect that creek. But if we can have few hangars there without influencing that part, I'm not against it, but it must not affect our floodplain in any form. And then the other is on the east side. I would the same thing. that I would not want to have 100 by 100. So we need to have more hangars. So if we have 60 by 60, we have 21 hangars there. So I think we do not want to mess around with the floodplain or the environment to add hangars to the airport. Middleton citizens are not likely to go for that, and I won't either. So don't mess around the floodplain, but if we can put the hangars on the west side, few hangars perhaps, and combine it with the east side, but not the 100 by 100, I will go with 60. And I will have another meeting coming in just about 8 minutes. So I'm going to stay about 8 more minutes. So
Okay. Mark?
So it sounds like the mayor favors alternative 1 is what I'm hearing, but
Yeah.
with the caveat that there not be development in floodplain.
Yes.
Is that correct, Mayor?
I have to look what the alternatives are. Just combine
It's on the
each-
screen.
Yeah.
Okay, so that is, yeah, that's fine. So combine the east side with the west side, as long as the west side does not interfere with the channel or with the floodplain in any form. Combine those two. It's not option 1 or 2. It may be a new option, but that's what I think looks practical. And that would be 60 by 60, not by 100 by 100.
Okay, there, with that caveat, I don't think there would be any hangars on the west side because of the floodplain and the park and the existing drainage channel. And on the east side, I will record your comment as any hangars over there should be, should be smaller than 100 by 100.
Yep,
That's what I heard you say.
Yep, if it is 60, you got 21 hangars there.
Okay, and then, oh, that's everybody. So I had 1 no build from Alder Broussard, Mayor Barr, alternative 1 modified, and then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, I think it was.
Okay.
Well, Kevin, you never specifically said alternative 2, but I think that's what you essentially said.
But Kevin did say 2.
Yes, alternate 2.
Okay. All right, so 1, 1, and 5.
Okay.
I mean, there's no motion, but I.
Yeah. So I'd go ahead and make a motion that the airport commission make a recommendation to the common council on alternate 2 for the hangars with the caveat that they may have to make adjustments based on if they want to consider a turf runway along Schneider Road.
This is Robert Burke. I would second the motion.
Okay. We have a first and a second. Any?
Two.
addition- Go
Could
ahead.
you clarify, so to recommend alternate 2
Yeah,
and to advocate for establishing a turf runway along Schneider Road? Is
yeah,
that
I'm gonna make that a separate motion.
Oh,
I'm
you
just
are.
saying that we should allow the Mead and Hunt to make any minor adjustments as they need based on fitting other pieces in, but also on soil borings. I mean, they may have to find out they have to move things right or left. I mean, so from a recommendation standpoint, I'm happy with it just as it is, with the understanding they're probably gonna have to make some adjustments. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. All right,
So what you're referring to is basically this, you're basically referring to the layout, recognizing. the
Yeah,
range between
they
them.
may have to change it. They may change the sizes a little bit.
This was a concept anyway. This was never a design or anything like that. So, but the idea, alternative 2 is the idea of having
Yes.
it be in this location. And that's what you're
Absolutely.
voting on. Okay, got it.
Okay, so we have a first and a second. Any additional discussion? Hearing none. Mark, will you please call the roll and a vote?
So the vote, an aye vote is in favor of alternative 2. So Michelle Bond,
Aye.
Mayor Barr,
No,
Alder Burke,
Aye.
Alder Broussard,
No.
Chair Halleck,
Aye.
David Lorman,
Aye.
Kevin Munson,
Aye.
5-2.
Good. All right. All right, so let's move on to the next item then. And I find this to be interesting, that the pattern rotation we've had so many times on, and there's so many discussions about talking to the BOA on it, and it's really not something you just one day pick and say, hey, I'm gonna change it. I mean, it's published and there has to be reasons for it. I think the whole purpose of this initially was to send traffic over the farm ground. With the vote of 6 and 7, we are now actually sending people to the north. And therefore, you've achieved the goal and then some. Also, the problem with changing rotation is you have to change rotation on both. Instead of flying over a certain house, now you fly over a different house. Anybody near the airport, in the aerodrome, they're going to get flown over. And so if today you changed it, you just have a different group of people tomorrow complaining. And I think there's an embedded learning, and we need to really think about the embedded learning and the safety. And I again think this is a safety issue. So the two arguments, or the main reason, I think, is to try to create something quiet, maybe a quieter route, but I really don't know that that can be personally achieved or not. So why don't we go through again the roll and just see who is in favor of a standard pattern and who's in favor of a non-standard pattern, and we can just again take a kind of a poll. And again, I just want to restate, by picking 6 and 7, we've kind of already done that, but I'll let you be the judge of that. So Mark, go ahead.
Okay, so Michelle Bond is alphabetically first.
Yeah,
Yep. So I'm going to say no opinion on this one.
okay.
Mayor Brar,
I'm the same, and I wouldn't mind keeping standard. So, and I have to sign off now. I got another meeting. So thank you.
Okay, so you'd like to keep it standard, but no opinion. Okay. Continue.
Burke,
I would keep the standard left turn as a preference, and I agree with Chair Halleck that if and when we could have a more expanded north-south runway, that kind of gives you all of the benefits of the right-hand turn. So I would definitely stick with the, maintain the current standard left-hand turn traffic pattern.
Alder Foussard,
Standard left turn.
Okay.
John Halleck,
Standard. Yeah.
David Lorman,
Maintain standard pattern.
and Kevin Munson.
Standard left turn pattern.
Okay. All right, looks like we have a preponderance on the standard. Would somebody like to make a motion? I made the last two.
This is Robert. This is Robert. I'd make a
Robert.
motion for the standard left-hand turn traffic pattern to be maintained.
Okay, a motion from Robert Burke on the standard, second.
I'll second.
I will second that.
Okay.
Who are you
So
recognizing, John?
actually, David was first.
Okay.
So we'll sit to David. And so we have a first and a second. And would anybody care to have any additional discussion? With not that, let's call the vote. And Mark, could you call the roll again, please?
Okay, well, okay, that's fine. Bond,
I support it.
I think Mayor Brar has left.
Okay.
I don't see him anymore. Alder Burke,
Aye.
Alder Foussard,
Aye.
John Halleck,
Aye.
David Lorman,
Aye.
Kevin Munson.
I,
Okay. All right, so the motion passes and we will recommend to the Common Council maintaining the standard pattern. I would like to make a motion regarding the Mead and Hunt and the council take a look at the possibility of an east-west turf runway north of the solar farm. There are a couple of things that we need to think about. One of them is that there is a 400-foot centerline to centerline requirement, minimum requirement for runways. This would meet that requirement. So this could be built and it could be legal. And as it being legal, it could be funded. There is no guidance yet on parallel adjacent, and there's no operating instructions on it. And the few documents I've seen have suggested if you do build it, you're going to pay for it. So I say, if we want to give the people with tail wheels something, let's give them something that's legal. That's something we can put on the ELP, and it's something that can be funded by the BOA and the FAA. So I'd like to make a motion that Mead and Hunt explore the possibility of adding an east-west turf runway on the north side of the solar farm. Anybody care?
John, just quick question. Does Mead and Hunt have budget or the ability to still do that? My understanding is we've exhausted that resource.
I have no idea. They're gonna have to go into a design phase anyhow. So, I mean, if there isn't, then there isn't, but
Got it.
I mean, if we're interested in providing a legal grass runway, this is a clear option and we can get it funded. So,
John,
I
Josh?
will. Well, go ahead.
No, I'm
Right.
sorry. I thought you were
Go ahead,
done.
Mark.
Well, Josh, I was just gonna say Josh Holbrook from the Bureau has his hand up, but Luke, I didn't want to cut you off. I'm sorry.
okay.
No. I was done. Please.
Josh, go ahead. Josh?
Let me ask to unmute him if that's a problem. Oh, it says he's available. Josh, we can't hear you if you're talking.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Well, now we can.
Okay,
Okay, go ahead.
I guess the two things I guess I would like to say with this is that was never in Mead and Hunt scope to look in a third runway, just so you know.
Yeah,
And the second one is I'm 95% sure the FAA would not participate in a third runway at a GA airport.
okay.
I can look that up, but I'm pretty confident in that one.
Okay, well, then it's a non-starter. That's a shame because it certainly looks like a good patch out there.
A lot of places just kind of make it on their own with their mower.
I hear what you're saying.
Not the best thing in the world to do, but I'm just trying to tell you what I've seen. But I'm pretty confident they wouldn't partake in that.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay, well, I guess based on Josh's comment, I could withdraw my motion if that's legal.
Well, there hadn't been a second yet, and you hadn't recognized anybody else for a
Okay.
second. I was going to point that out if there hadn't been a second, but if you're
Okay,
making it, withdrawing it, it's not a withdrawal, I guess. You're just,
well, I'll listen, let it die on the table. Does anybody care to second it?
that's a good way to handle it. Motion
Okay,
died for
okay.
lack of a second.
So the motion died for lack of it. Yeah, I was just trying to figure out how to get something legal that would fit, but try again. What else do we have that we haven't approved or taken up that needs to be taken up with the master plan? Mark, are we missing something?
No, I think those are the key. We identified the 4 categories of discussion from AMPAC. I think you have gone through the substance of the work that's been done to date leading up to chapter 5, which is the alternatives. So I think you've provided guidance, and the idea is that this would go to the Common Council. Ultimately, the council is the decision-making body, as has often been stated. It's my understanding, I know that for a fact that council members are intending to be deliberative in this process and to do a community survey
Yes.
before they make any
further, before they make a formal recommendation, or not recommendation, before they make a formal decision on how to finish the master plan, which are instructions to Mead and Hunt for how to finish the master plan. Before the council does that, there's been a commitment to conduct a community survey, which is not part of Mead and Hunt's scope of services. So that's where we stand right now. I would take these minutes to the council for their further guidance.
Okay. Well, I think we did our job. We have of the 4 areas, we've given a clear direction and not just that here's a bunch of thoughts. And I think they deserve that. And so I think we've done our job with that.
Can I just say, I just wanted to say, Chairman Halleck, thank you for leading an organized and very civil discussion on on these topics. That was very well done.
All right, well, thank you, Lou. So we will resume our typical discussions of the airport next month and review the financials and everything else. And the master plan is now on its way, our comments on its way to the Common Council. Any comments about future events or agenda items?
Did I see an announcement that maybe our next meetings will be in person, Mark?
We are heading that way. The council building, the city hall will be open as of Monday, and committees and commissions and boards are transitioning to in-person meetings, possibly retaining a hybrid option, which some have found very convenient to have these Zoom meetings, but there's still logistics to work out with that. It obviously creates, I mean, having in-person meetings is what we're all accustomed to, and Zoom meetings, introducing that, we just have to make sure that that's still to be determined, but we are open as of Monday as a city facility, and stay tuned for more details as we approach our next meeting in July.
Yeah, so you'll just send us instruction ahead of the meeting whether we plan to meet virtually or in person.
Right.
Okay, thank you.
So there's more to come on that one. Would anybody like to make a motion to adjourn? I think we've exhausted the agenda.
I will make that motion.
Okay, Luke, I have a motion to adjourn. Do I hear a second?
Second.
David second. So we have a first and a second. Any additional discussion? With that, let's just call a vote. All in favor of adjourning, say aye.
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 Opposed, same side. Motion carries. The June meeting of the Airport Commission is officially concluded. Thank you for everybody. We got through it.